Right, today I wanted to talk about how I went from this photograph to this photograph. These two photographs were taken about 5 years apart, and I wanted to explain my photography journey and how my kit has influenced my journey and ultimately my style of photography. So let's jump in and have a look at that. I'll just grab it off the shelf. So this was my first proper not mirrorless, I'm going to say mirrorless, I've got mirrorless in my head. My first proper DSLR. I did have a Fuji bridge camera before this, which broke. So I went and purchased a Nikon D3200 with, well, it came with the 18 to 50, it might be 55mm kit lens, and this camera and that kit lens were the reason why my photography turned into what it did. So let's jog my memory. Initially, when you get a camera, you take it on holiday with you and you take photographs like this and this, and then you think, I'm not really happy with that, so you start doing black and white photographs, and then you go down the slightly over editing route. After that you start chasing sunsets because your images look flat and boring. So you get through the sunset stage, then you start photographing objects, like, well, in this case cars. And you look around at other people's photographs and you think, well, they've all got a very distinctive style, but I don't seem to have any style at all. I'm just photographing things randomly, and the reason is because you haven't taken enough photographs to actually develop a style yet, and that's how I certainly felt at this stage. And then obviously working a full day, you want to use your camera, so after work you go out and it's dark and you think, like, well, I'm wasting my time going out in the dark, but you go out anyway and occasionally you get a good photo like this. So you think, that wasn't a disaster, I shall keep going out in the dark. I'm more than happy to go out in the dark, it seems to be not that bad. And then you take some photos like this and this, and you start to see colours that aren't there during daytime. Okay, they're a trick of the white balance, if you like, but it's a real eye-opener seeing these colours that are there that don't appear to be there in daylight. So I kind of got hooked on that, so ended up going to places and taking photographs of things like this windmill. What I soon found was, well, I get there in daylight, photograph the sunset and just play around. So I started taking lights with me and just playing around with lights. First few goes were pretty awful, but I managed to get some fairly good light painting going in the end. And then you realise, well, I'm actually taking photographs of stars as well now. So you start thinking, I wonder if I can get these Milky Way shots that I've seen other people doing. So my first Milky Way shot was purely a case of, right, I'm going to go down the beach, there shouldn't be too much light pollution, I'm going to face south and just see if I can find and photograph the Milky Way, which I did here. you come home, you do some research, and you think, right, I'm going to find a place that seems to be popular with other Milky Way photographers. I'm going to go there and see if I can capture the Milky Way with something of interest in the foreground. So you do that and you end up with images like these. So now you're hooked on night photography and astrophotography, and then you realise that you can only do Milky Way photography realistically as probably 1 week a month, and if you're lucky, well, you got to hope for clear skies, so you could go months without anything to photograph just because of weather, the moon position. So you end up going out anyway, and then you do stuff like these moon rises, moon photographs, just because now I find that more interesting than taking photographs in daylight. And then you go to places where you can see the Milky Way, but there isn't necessarily anything interesting to photograph, because finding locations where there's something interesting in the foreground that you can photograph the Milky Way and an interesting foreground, bearing in mind that the Milky Way throughout, well, probably from April to September starts off in the southeast, and by September it's round in the southwest. So your compositions are continually changing. So then you think, well, if there's nothing there particularly interesting for me to photograph, I'll stick myself in the photograph. So you end up with Milky Way selfies. Then you try woodland photography. Then you come back to what is now clearly developed into your style of photography, and you just crack on down the light painting, astrophotography route, and you end up with photographs like these. And it's taken me 5 years to get there. You're probably on the same journey as me. I don't know what state you might be at the very beginning of it. You might have developed a style. If you haven't got a style, then you need to keep shooting, and your style will slowly kind of fall out of that. My style, I would say, was, I wouldn't say it was influenced by what other people were doing. I did my own thing and then found that other people were also producing similar sort of work with a similar style, but you still have a little niche within that is definitely you, your signature work. I do have friends that are professional photographers, and if you put up 50 photographs, I could pick his work out of those photographs because his style is so unique. So you just have to keep working and keep plugging away to get that style. Equipment is a huge influence on your style. So back to my humble little Nikon D3200 that really started my journey. And the reason I ended up with the style I have is because this camera is not very good in low light. It produces really noisy images in the shadows. So I soon learned that to get good nighttime images from this camera, I needed to go somewhere with a lot of ambient light, cities for example, or I had to take my lights with me. And that's how I've ended up doing astrophotography and light painting. And if it wasn't for this camera, if I'd chosen a different camera, I might have gone a different route, because each camera has its own strengths and weaknesses. This was all I could afford at the time, and that's why I am where I am now. The bizarre thing is, the style of photography I do for my own, what I'd call passion projects, have absolutely nothing to do with the work I do professionally. But my passion projects get me my professional work. My professional work, believe it or not, is product photography, small items, spare parts for websites. As simple as that. You have to do a lot of work, a lot of photographs, a lot of throughput at a low price, but you do enough of them and you can make good money doing it. And that's how I've ended up where I am, all because of this camera. So thank you, Nikon D3200.